Hello, hi, hola, handle and greeting. Welcome. This video is about welcoming so many of the people who just started downloading Blender at version 2.8 with this dashing little running girl and her little puppy. So when you start it for the very first time, or if you've uninstalled it and reinstalled Blender 2.8, you are confronted with this whole quick setup. Let's discuss 2.79 settings. We're going to try to get away from those because although it was a famous right-click select, which you could activate this way at this quick setup screen, the industry tends to be a left-click select. And that's a pity because right-click select was one of the interesting, unique features of Blender that really got stuck in the back of your head. The space bar used to be the way to search, but may now be the way to play. And what it doesn't tell you here is that search then becomes F3. And the theme Blender Dark is actually very normal. It's, I think, easier on your screen, easier on your eyes, and it makes your artwork pop out just a little bit better, black being the bezels of some of the best TVs. And you know that white is trouble for a lot of the cell phones and their cameras, and also images just don't appear as comparatively brighter on white bezels. So Blender Dark is fine for me. I'm going to save new settings, and now it goes to the standard startup screen. The splash screen, like I said, doesn't tell us that F3 now brings up search, and right-clicking out of that will deactivate whatever menu is waiting for your attention. And so if I click F3 and then right-click over here, right-click no longer selects. It now gives us a context menu for whatever it is that we're sitting on top of, which is completely normal. Right-clicking, well, first selecting with the left click and then right-clicking the thing that is beneath your mouse will give you the context menu of the thing, presuming that it is also selected with the left click. Now this, on a Windows machine, this window up here, this, I don't remember the proper name, but you can see it with the minimize, restore, and exit buttons at the top, is something that Alt F11 used to make go away, and it was called toggle window full screen as a shortcut. Well, now that shortcut is gone, so you have to click window and then toggle window full screen. If you were ever curious what I enjoyed having and not having on my screen, I'm constantly right-clicking by mistake to select because I'm still not quite there yet, you know what I mean? I get rid of the default cube and I go under Edit and Preferences and I do two things for navigation. One is zooming to the mouse position, very handy. Without it, this happens. I put my mouse over the lamp and then zoom in, not to the lamp, but to the center of the screen space. So now Edit and Preferences, Navigation, Zoom to mouse position. I put my mouse over the lamp and zoom in, and I zoom in not to the center of the screen space, but to where my mouse was actually located. And it's you can get good at that and kind of learn to steer that way and make things zoom where you want them in the screen. Another preference for navigation is also auto depth. If you noticed, we went flying right past that lamp as I zoomed into it. Auto depth detects that we are closer, 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 and then it slows us down as we get close enough to this lamp. You can still go past it, but it's a lot harder. And now as we get farther from the lamp, each sort of tick on the mouse wheel, which was the tool I'm using to zoom, it is proportionately larger than the other clicks. As we get closer, each click is just a tiny Blender unit closer. So there are some other things that we're hiding. If you were used to changing your field of view here in this screen, you would press N to get the Properties menu over here, and it would be a long column of all sorts of things. Well, now the tabs are hiding over here, and one such tab is View. And one of the views is the camera view. The focal length, I think, used to be like 30 or 35 in your screen here. What do they call it? In your view? Sure, why not? And to prevent a kind of weird perspective distortion, I found that 70 is really good. And one of the perspective distortions is if you have a picture and you're looking through orthographic view work when you're trying to do someone's portrait and everything is strangely flat and then not flat when you move away and everything is just sort of weirdly distorted. It's usually because the view was so far away from orthographic that it created a perspective distortion. So 70 millimeters is a good compromise between flattening things out like a perspective telephoto, and I keep saying perspective because it's not really fisheye. They are straight lines that don't meet in the distance. So it's like drawing with a ruler. Anyway, that's where that's hiding. There you go. And whatever tool you have, its active tool stuff is right here. The letter N makes that appear and disappear. The letter T still makes the tool shelf appear and disappear, but a couple things are missing from the tool shelf. Now what else did I like? Oh, yes, preferences. There's a couple add-ons, even though I don't use them all the time, I really like to have them. Extra is all I have to type when I search, and there's extra curve objects and extra mesh objects, and those extra objects help me make spirals. They help me create a single vertex, mirror the single vertex, or they create a rounded cube, for example. So without those, Shift-A does this, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 items under mesh, and then 5 items under the 2D one. And if I go back and take care of those, they're immediately available, by the way. If you're just using Blender for the first time, I don't have to reload the program. Now Mesh has far more than 10, and Curve has far more than 5. You can explore, totally explore, because that stuff is pretty cool. And seeing what's already enabled is very helpful. Oh yeah, I haven't started this one at all. I have a computer upstairs that I've started. This one's very useful. The SVG Scalable Vector Graphics is very useful. Image as planes is also not by default enabled, and that's a famous one. Type in the word image and you have import images as planes. It's as beautiful as it sounds. And the other thing is the word node. You'd want to have that taken care of for sure. There's also something out there called animation nodes, and AN, the two capital letters, allow us, Shift F3, to go into the editor type, which is a shader editor. You'll see that Shift F3 gives us 3 different editors. What's interesting about 2.8 here is that if I hit Shift F3 again, it keeps changing the type of editor, and it cycles through those 3, if you see up here. That's pretty cool. Shift F5 will get you back to this primary view. Now, the good thing that I really like about this 2.8 is these different layouts up here. I don't know if they're called workspaces. Is that it? Yes. Different workspaces. And so I have gotten used to creating my own workspace with Shift F3, and this basically lets you create, like a material output and input. We can talk about that later if you don't know what I'm talking about. But those things are also available under shading and UV editing. Shading especially will take whatever material you have, although I have no object at the moment. Torus is fun. So we can look at Torus, select, I don't like how these things are on the weird side of this column. Select a material that is brand new and just name it Torus. Sometimes when you get that .001, it means there was already a material in there and it belonged to the cube. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go back to this and I will get rid of it and I'll use the material that used to be on the cube and I'll call it Torus. Neat thing about Blender 2.8 here, I can have my mouse over this and press F2, just like a file explorer in Microsoft Windows, and rename the object, whatever I want. And now here, in the outliner, it has taken the new name. And here, in the Data tab, which is now, I guess, pardon me, the Object tab, it is also named. But it's so much easier, I think, to mouse over in the view and press F2 to take care of that. Layers is a little more complicated because they're called collections now, and there's a weird glitch where if you bring in layers from an old file of Blender, some of them are just hidden, and that's annoying. Here's the point. Let's go back to layout, which is like the default hello, welcome layout. And we've got that material lingering. Let me just put this right here. I'm going to go to File and Defaults, and I'm going to save the changes I've made so far as my startup file. I'll confirm that. And now, the next time I open this, it should kind of default to these settings with those add-ons enabled. And it will also probably have a... no, it won't have a stray material hanging out. I will discard those changes. And now really the point of all of this is because I've been playing with the newer Planet method. I really kind of dig this, but I've been exploring between Eevee and the cycles, because cycles still, in my opinion, kind of reigns supreme. And now here I am under the shading workspace. If I go back under layout, we can see that this very unexciting set of spheres and round cubes, which I've smartly named. Z8 is what will get us where we want to go, and that shows us what it is that we're supposed to be seeing, and that's a rendered view. And right now this rendered view is in cycles, and I was exploring the ability of cycles in 2.8 to handle volumes, and using those volumes I was cheating. I was creating shorelines with volume instead of creating it any other way with diffuse. So still cheating, but it's nice to be able to bring in an old file and take a look with the new software. There are ways you can speed up cycles inside 2.8, and I haven't used a single one of them. Not a single one. I was just exploring with being able to see inside the water at some of that coastline. So this is a very shallow shore, and that is geometry that you are looking at through a volume. So that water, I'm very excited about this. That water has a reflection on the surface, and it has a volume for its depth. You get it? Like, that's actually kind of fun. I'm working on that one. So Z and 6 show you the solid view. Z and 4 show you the wireframe. It's a bit dense. Z and 2 show you developer view. And I've honestly, it's just weird, but this is, what is it called? Yeah, dev look dev. Some things work. This is volume back here, the square, and that's really odd. I don't know how to change it, and I'm not going to look into it right now. It's just kind of fun to show you that little thing. If we hit Control Q and just hop out of here discarding changes, we can, I almost hit Control N to start a new session. But get in, and you'll see now this is the second time, and it has only recorded one event inside my Blender session, but this is how we left it the first time. You'll notice up here that I do not have to press Window Toggle Full Screen. The Alt F11 is gone. Someone was making fun of some of the key bindings and hotkeys, but really Blender's genius is that it keeps your hands sort of basically keyboard mouse. You don't need a lot of extra input and weird menus all over the side, because a lot of the things that you could do to a mesh or a piece of a mesh happen with all sorts of shortcuts, and key maps show you what you can look forward to. I mean, there are some easy ones, obviously. Control N is a new file. Control S would save a Blender file. Then there are more complicated ones like cycle space type set. Shift F3. I might understand what that is, but is it Shift F3 is what the the workspace. Yes, cycle through the different workspaces typesets. Anyway, that's really worth investigating, especially if you're already familiar with Blender. You could go and figure out. Now here is the search menu under F3, and if you felt like changing that, you sure could. You could just press a key and tell it what you wanted it to change it to. That's awfully easy, and you'll get the hang of it if you're new to Blender. I enjoyed those changes, and I think I'm just keeping it that simple right now. Those were basically the preferences. Those are basically the preferences that I like for add-on and for navigation. The key map is important to change if you wish to change it, and other things that you may enjoy is like a detail like this. Somewhere up here I can right-click and I can flip that entire menu to the bottom. It's called a header. You can show it or unshow it, and really in 2.79 that's where this sort of stuff was. The select header, add mesh, and do something to the object was down on the bottom, and people would click here at the bottom of the view space and be able to change whatever the editor type was. Now in 2.8 its default position is flipped up to the top. That took me a little while to get used to, because even the pivot point control menus and the proportional editing options and menus were down on the bottom at the center. And if you really have to have it that way, it helps to be able to right-click, oh gosh, and flip to the bottom. Now, I mentioned earlier that these are in such a weird space that my mouse just keeps kind of going past them whenever I swing over to them. I can right-click for that navigation bar and flip it to the right. Now, I can just throw my mouse all the way to the side and find those, like the Material tab. I can find it right there, the Texture tab right there, and they're not hanging on the side inconveniently like that. That to me is pretty handy. I suppose if there was one more thing I had to say for add-ons, it would be the F2. That mesh F2 thing has been an interesting little saver for me. It's already active now that we've turned on the add-on, and I've got to say that although I don't do a lot of box modeling and pulling vertices, edges, and faces, it's been pretty cool to be able to do something like that where you can tab in, press 1 across the top of the keyboard, and then with a left click, not a right click, select one vertex, and then pressing F will let you continue to create from that, although that was not an ideal situation. This is control and right click just to walk that edge as an extrusion to different locations. There's your Dr. Seuss sidewalk. But if there's a right click select again, now had this vertex here in the corner of 3 vertices. There's 1, 2, and 3. We choose the inside corner and we press F and then commit with a left click. It kind of automatically maths itself to create that quad where otherwise you would have had to really, really guess. And that kind of experience is very good for beginners who wonder how to close holes when the vertex is just floating in the air like that based on the existence of vertices that already exist. That is something that F2 Mesh Tools helps with. I know that was a very simple, stupid example, but that's what I got. Hey, thanks for watching. If you've just started with 2.8, welcome to the club. Most of us have. Eevee is going to be upgraded, changing. Cycles, however, if you flip it to your GPU, is going to be something that's already established, and we have better shaders for it. I'm going to kill this thing, and I'm going to save my version of 2.8 under cycles, and that is how we are going to roll until Eevee gets a little huskier with things like displacement and transparency. There we go. I've saved the startup file. Thanks for your comments and your subscriptions. A lot of you have snuck in and subscribed since the advent of 2.8, and I appreciate it. Peace be with you, man. Blend on, and thanks for watching.